Hi everybody, this is Brandon from the Bantu Sun and welcome to the map. So today we got the map up. This is actually a map for the United States, the exceptional edition. This is the map, the 100-piece jigsaw puzzle that you will find inside of our Geopolitics in the Box learning kit. So what I wanted to do is go through the various regions and give a breakdown or just walk through it. It's been a while since I've been through this one, so I do have my learning guide with me that helped me out. And I just wanted to just walk through, give a couple call outs on, and identify some notations that I thought were interesting facts and some cases very important to know. So, the Northeast region is going to cover pretty much Maine down to Pennsylvania and Delaware, and then we cut it off right there, and then we put the portion under that to the south. So, if you have the guide, I'm looking through the guide right now, and each way we wanted to do it is we really want to break this up into regions to make it digestible. So, it's five learning kits. Um, United States the Exceptional Edition, Europe the Conscious, Asia the Inevitable, Africa the Continent, Latin America, and the Caribbean, the New World. So, the United States the Exceptional Edition. Why do we call it the Exceptional Edition? Well, one, from the edition point of view, out of all those five puzzle packages that we have, all five together, we call it the Global Bundle. Out of all five, the United States is the only one that is actually a country. For many reasons, we decided to do that, but other boxes are going to contain continents or extra continental areas, such as Latin America and the Caribbean. So, reason why we decided to break the United States up is because the United States is exceptional in regard that no other time in history has 300 million people had such a high quality of life. It's very difficult to have a society that hyper productive to afford 300 million people, where it's 330 million people more like, such a high standard of living for the everyday person. So if you look at the populations on either side of the United States, so the way the rankings work is China, which is a consensus number one, but I really think India's up there. They might be neck to neck or head to head, whatnot. And so it's going to be China, India, then the United States is number three for the population. And then you're going to have Indonesia beneath the population size of United States. So India number two, Indonesia number four, have a fraction of the per capita income that the average American has. Then it speaks to the difficulty it takes to achieve that high standard of living. You rarely see a large population with a high standard of living. Even though I know China is working their tail off to get there, and they're making drastic gains every year. So we also wanted to comment. So the reason that this is the case is American immigration, open immigration. So America really brought opened the doors, and they had the resources for the people they opened the doors for, and it was kind of a have at it type of mentality where Americans were not being pinned down. So during the colonial era, the British kept trying to pin the Americans back in negotiations with the natives of the land. When the British were defeated, America went buck wild. So, and they spread crazily. So, I'm talking about gold rushes, land rushes, etc. So, they brought in a bunch of people, and the land was highly fertile. And those people that they brought in became highly, um, they had a lot of kids. So, the people that came in, American generations were doubling, like every three generations, American population was doubling. So the populations that they brought in flourished because of there's the abundant opportunity, and as America demographic spread through ruthless expansion, because the wiping out or decimating the native population, which is beyond decimation. It was almost apocalyptic, but through disease and war, the American population took over the land. And this was a very industrious population. And they utilized the vast wealth and resources that this country had to offer, whether that's oil, coal, agricultural land, copper, gold, you name it, anything that was needed at the time, America had it, and they had a population that had the energy and the industriousness to utilize it. So you created this hyper productive society, and that's pretty much what made America so exceptional in that regard is the ability to have such a commercialized society to get to that high standard of living. So that's why we get the name from the exceptional edition. So this first region that we're going to discuss is going to be the Northeast. So our summary for the Northeast, which we have in the guide, we're going to say the Northeast forms the cultural roots of American freedom. This relates to freedom of religion, being home to many religious settlements, most notably Plymouth Colony. National freedom, being a location of the Boston Tea Party and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And individual freedom, serving as the heart of the American abolitionist movement. Geographically, its natural harbors, access to Great Lakes regions and rivers, used early on to power its mills, allowed the region to quickly become the center of early American industry and commerce. The Northeast is the densest region of the country, hosting 17% of the U.S. population. And so, when Europeans came over and settled into the United States, this was primarily the region that they settled in. So I don't, you should be able to see it, but we have white stars outlined in some of these states. Those white stars are the 13, represent the 13 original colonies. So it can be 13 white stars over 13 states. So I have memorized the 13 colonies finally. I've got my way of doing it, so I'll let you know what it is. Hopefully it helps you, but I have a 3-3-3-4 model, right? And I gave my 3-3-4 models these names. Don't judge. So it's going to be 3 babies, 3 news, 3 mid-Atlantics, 4 southern. Don't judge me, right? So the 3 babies, for lack of a better phrase, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. I call them the babies because they're relatively small states. 3 news, New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire. The 3 mid-Atlantics, your Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. And then your 4 southern, these states sided with the Confederates during the Civil War. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So those were the 13 colonies. As you know, 9 of those 13 colonies is north of Virginia. So the country kind of has a northern tilt with the 13 colonies, seeing that 9 out of the original 13 colonies were considered northern colonies. And so I'll start off with Maine. So Maine is relatively rural. I don't want to say rural, but it's very natural. So one of the facts I found out that Maine is actually 80% pine trees. So people in Maine, please chime in. This is true. Is this true? Like I can't believe that it's that many pine trees. You have to send a picture of the beautiful Maine land. But you can see that it's a lot more natural. It definitely has one of the smallest, if not the smallest populations east of the Mississippi River, I'm guessing. So we have the moose, we have the export of the lobster, we have the pine trees and blueberries. So Maine, natural vacation, there you go. Where else would you want to go on the East Coast, right? So next notable place I wanted to call out, moving down, is I wanted to look at New Hampshire. As you can see, that beautiful building. So that's indicative of Bretton Woods. So I wanted to read off for Bretton Woods because I thought it was a very important place. In July 1944, 1 year before the official end of World War II, members of the soon-to-be victorious Allied nations met at Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods. They met here to discuss the organization of the world financial order at the conclusion of the war. Discussion would eventually lead to the Bretton Woods system. As a consequence, the U.S. dollar would be established as the world's currency, as well as the creation of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So this is a very important time and place because it kind of built the current world order coming out of World War II and the Allied nations getting together and saying this is not only how we're going to govern ourselves, but how we're going to kind of implement the rule of law on the world, or at least the structure of finance on the world. Coming down from New Hampshire, let's call out. So I got Massachusetts. So I have a ship off the coast of Massachusetts. That's going to be the Mayflower. So the Mayflower was a ship transporting 120 passengers who were religious separatists, Puritans, better known as Pilgrims. They settled in a new world seeking freedom from religious persecution. So if you ever want to do a compare and contrast, the two places that I always look at in the American founding is the commercial center of Virginia, and this is the English side of the founding of the country, because you're going to see other groups settle here as well, primarily the Dutch in New York. But you have this religious separatist, almost zealot group in Massachusetts, as opposed to this commercial, make money, get money group that came into Virginia. So they had two different journeys. The trend for Virginia. Virginia eventually becomes the demographic center of the country very early on. But it's more the egalitarian society up north. They had the people of Massachusetts had how should I say, more beneficial relationships with the indigenous native groups there, and were able to figure out how to feed themselves, etc. And then the people of Virginia, like, they had horrible colonies with winners and deaths, and they really had two different scenarios with two different foundings for those two places. So it's a great compare contrast in the early American understanding of those two states. We also have a university out there, so this as well speaks to the lineage of the country. United States was founded east to west, based off its European foundings, and a lot of so Ivy Leagues is a great example. So Massachusetts, you have MIT, you have Harvard, but Harvard, Yale, MIT, Princeton, a lot of these lineage schools that you'll find, these Ivy Leagues, they're going to be primarily East Coasters. You have University of Chicago in the Midwest. You have like Stanford and a couple other universities in California, but primarily these legacy institutions is going to be in the East Coast, primarily in these 13 colonies. Moving down, so yeah, New York. So in New York, we do have the ship with the red, white, and blue flag. That's going to be the Dutch. So I wanted to make sure we called out that the original founding. So the Dutch were kind of like the commercial giants for such a small country. This is a big feat, but they were the commercial giants of the global order, or the global order of things. And then the British came and took over from the Dutch, but they were pretty much everywhere. So South Africa, Indonesia, modern day Indonesia, and here what was called New Amsterdam. So the 17th century Dutch settlement at the southern tip of Manhattan, downtown New York, and it was captured by the English in 1664 and was renamed New York. So the British took it off. There was plenty of wars, Anglo-Dutch wars between the Dutch and the British, and they traded off different colonies at various times. But New York is one of those aspects, and this is in the lineage of America. There are many famous Dutch descendants. Cornelius Vanderbilt being one, the Roosevelt dynasty being others, as well as the Schuyler. So I saw Alexander Hamilton. So the Schuylers, which were a wealthy family in New York at the time, they're Dutch descendants as well. Moving down, so let's talk Pennsylvania. So I want to give a call out to William Penn. So William Penn was an English writer, Quaker, and religious thinker who founded the province of Pennsylvania in the late 17th century. The name Pennsylvania literally means Penn's wood. Penn was able to acquire Pennsylvania through a settlement of debts to Penn's father, so William Penn, from King Charles II. So I just thought that was important because Pennsylvania was kind of like the state that was kind of one of the major pass-throughs for migration westward. So Virginia and West Virginia were one at one time, and you had colonists being at this massive demographic center started to go west, and they went down. Some came up from the northeast and came down the Ohio River. Others through the Cumberland Gap. But they went through that Ohio River, and that starts the treading west. This bleeding west of peoples along that eastern seaboard that begin to populate. Now these people which go west, they become the primary pushers there, the expansionists, keep pushing the border westward, would eventually grow into what we refer to as manifest destination. But they would come down this Ohio River and they settled along that Kentucky area, and they started to spread out from that point. So between the Ohio River and that southern border of the Midwest, and you have the lakes at the top, which other people were traveling through as well to get to the Midwest. So it was all these arteries that not only made navigation and transportation very easy at the early stages of American founding. So America, as you can see, already had these great gifts that allowed it to have this cross culture exchange. So you can have demography shifting relatively easily across vast distances. If you got people shifting across vast distances relatively easy, you also have commerce shifting across vast distances relatively easy. So these are like some of the fundamental bedrocks that natural harbors. New York is one of the finest harbors in the world. These natural harbors that they're able to utilize, which basically contribute to growing to this financial giant, which it would eventually one day become. So, so a couple more call outs. So Delaware, wanted to make sure you knew Delaware was the first state. So they didn't know that one. So Delaware actually was the first state to ratify the Constitution in 1787. So in the guide, every state is going to have the capital city, as well as like what its major physical or tangible good export is. Maine, your lobster, Massachusetts, microchips. And it's also going to tell you the year that it became a state. So very interesting looking at that various timeline. So that's the Northeast. So let me know your thoughts and what you think. Any call outs, anything I missed, anything you think I could have did a little bit better. So I would love to hear. Comment below. Feel free to share the video. Thanks for joining. Till next time, Bantu up.